It's kind of a crazy thing, though, to be saying that like we don't have time to feed ourselves properly. That's if because we're working, but if we don't feed ourselves properly, whether it's quality or quantity or when, how, then we're not really healthy. And if we're not healthy, that's kind of the basis for everything. So it's a lot of situations
Yeah.
like that where we have a rise in public health problems, a lot
Hmm.
of chronic diseases. A lot of them come from and or food related, whether it's heart issues or diabetes. These are mostly food related, and so that goes on to one of my questions that I've had that I wanted to discuss with you. It's something that came up in my research that there's a huge trend that's not only ongoing in the US, but sadly, it's also being observed in third world countries. So very soon we're going to have the entire country that majorly is going to be feeding itself by through ultra processed foods. So we're not
Hmm.
talking just like processing can simply be cooking. Boiling is a way of processing the raw natural food. But ultra processed is a word, an actual notation that comes from the United Nations because they did some research on that. And that means there's a certain level of processing where, unfortunately, at the end, you might have started with a potato, but the potato chips or sometimes even further down when you have prepared meals that you just heat up on, TV dinners and things like that.
Hmm.
They're so processed. There's so many steps that basically at each step you're losing a little bit of something. And when you
Hmm.
analyze food at the end of that chain, at the end of the cycle, you end up having lost a lot of the nutrients, a lot of the fibers, and it ended up being very like high calorie, but more from like saturated fats and not
Hmm.
necessarily from the natural fat that you would want because healthy fat is important, um, or the nutrients, the amino acids, and all these things. And that's what people don't realize anymore. So, what's your experience so far? What's your relationship with this trend of the rise of ultra processed foods, like you said, McDonald's, but other prepared
Yeah,
dishes?
and you know, and I think the reason why we have ultra processed food is because of those two things. It's convenient and it's cheap. But you're right. It's definitely if that becomes your primary diet, it does lead to obesity and a lot of health problems, that we're seeing in America. And it's cancer and it just and it's really really sad. And it's speaking from my own experience. I mean, when my kids were really, really young, like, I have triplets, by the way. I mean, it was really, really tough. Me and my wife, I'm working a lot as a chef and, I don't really have a lot of time at home to cook our own meal, so we did, use a lot of the frozen food, convenience foods. I'm going out to eat, but, so it definitely wasn't a healthy lifestyle. But as they got older and I spent more time, cooking at home, I can see that the health of my family is definitely improved. Like we don't, we hardly go out to eat, very much. I mean, we'll go to like Chipotle or something, but as far as, staying away from a lot of the processed food. So we eat a lot of more of the whole grain food. So we stayed away from, so any kind. So for example, whole wheat flours. I'm going with whole fruits and vegetables. So I cook a lot. Luckily they say, oh, my dad's a chef, so he can cook. But I can see that when you cook for yourself, and there is and it's kind of funny because I see both sides. Like, how I cook at home is not. I would not cook like that in the restaurant. You know what I mean? I mean because it's time consuming. You know what I mean? Because in a restaurant, of course, you have labor costs and you're worrying about that, and also food costs as well. It's like, if I'm making this dinner, how could I, I don't, as a chef in the industry, I'm looking to make a profit. It's not a dirty word, but you have to make money because you have to pay a staff. You know what I mean? You have to pay yourself. You have to keep the lights on. You have overhead. You know what I mean? So that's a big driver of it.
So how do
So
you
I,
cook at home then? Can you describe a little bit like how that's different and what's
oh
more relatable to people?
oh yeah. So as I cook at home, I mean, I cook very simply. I mean, I cook everything from scratch. So for example, last night I did a roast chicken. I just bought a chicken. I bought this. It was from Heinen's. It was $5 to $6 from it was a Gerber product. And then, which is, and now if you think about, I paid $6 for a chicken, to me, if I go to Boston Market, it's about the same price, you know what I mean? But I get a better product. It's actually more, it's a bigger bird, you know what I mean? It's about at Boston Market, those birds are probably about 3 to 4 pounds. This is a 4 to 5 pound bird. So I did a roast chicken. Also did, I got some butternut squash from the, I'm doing this thing called a CSA. Have you guys ever heard of it? It's called Community Supported Agriculture. So that's a way for, again, stepping out of that paradigm of just going to Giant Eagle or Highness to buy stuff. So a CSA or Community Service Agriculture is it's a weekly subscription, vegetable subscription. You pay a local farmer and then they drop off a bag of produce every week. So, and it's really cool because now we're talking about varying what you eat. Like, when you talk about nutrition, it's all about eating different colors. You know what I mean? So, some weeks I'll have, different kind of squashes. I just got some heirloom carrots. I have like 5 different color, it's an amazing product. Brussels sprouts. So
I do that too. I'm Fresh Fork Market member, and
okay, yeah, they're awesome. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and well,
Trevor
last night I made a pizza that was totally Fresh Fork Market, because in my bag last week I got whole wheat dough and I got chicken sausage and a tomato sauce that they so it's lovely. But to play devil's advocate, I mean, I can afford that. And I have access to it. I can get in my car and drive and pick it up. But what about those people that live in the food deserts that, McDonald's is about all they can afford, right? So, how, and it's just a question, a question that we need to ask is how do we teach those people in those areas to grow their own food and to make healthy choices, and when maybe life is just hard enough.
Hold that thought 1 second. I gotta grab something.
Do you want me to pause it? Okay, George, remember, I gotta go. I'm wondering if I do leave, you'll cut this out, right?
Yeah, but then if I don't know how that would work with like saving, because it would save it. What time do you have to leave?
Yeah, I got one of those in my bag a couple
weeks ago. Yeah. You know what this is, Julia?
Brussels sprouts.
Yeah, right. Isn't that cool? So that was, again, from the, I mean, to me, I'd always seen them like that. If you go to a store, you get them. But, from the CSA, we got this beautiful, and it looks like an alien kind of thing. So
the only takes up too much space in the refrigerator.
So how can I say it? So yes, that as far as the idea of food deserts, that is, where there's the lack of fresh produce and availability. But I've been involved with several projects, with our program that tries to address that problem. So I'm just going to kind of say what we've been doing, and that, and hopefully that kind of, I mean, it's not going to solve the problem overnight, but at least it's in the step in the right direction. So there's this place called a cornucopia. It's can't remember the address, but it's in a food desert, and it's a kitchen that showcases how to cook different, and invites the community, right? Because it's community, within it's right in the middle of that food desert, and it provides an opportunity for chefs to showcase their skills and how to incorporate different products. But actually another interesting project that I'm involved with is it's called Fresh Camp. You guys ever heard of this? Or it's called Fresh Collective. So what it is it's in the city of Cleveland, and it's this gentleman, he's actually goes by DJ Doc. He started this organization, and he first started out as a hip hop summer camp for elementary school students, right? And they do they do like CDs and rap and stuff like that. But and then from there he actually extended it, and what they do is they do community gardens. So you're starting at the elementary school level and starting to show gardens at different elementary schools. The students get to grow their own produce and incorporate that into their as far as being aware of. using
until their lives, into their understanding of food. And that's a huge, I think it's great that you were mentioning that. That is a huge thing that we're seeing right now, is like younger generation are completely getting disconnected from what food is, where it comes from, because everything is so processed. When you eat a chips, you're not really eating a potato.
Yeah.
But we think that it's like, well, it's made of potato. That's healthy. Not when it's super processed and full of oil. And that's like simple processing, but it gets worse than that. So reconnecting like that from the get-go, people to like, yeah, that's what's natural.
like
And that's
starting young, and addressing that problem of, and as they grow older, they can be like, if this is the first time they try a fresh a tomato that's fresh, now as a consumer, once they get older and they can make those decisions, so hopefully that changes that attitude, and create a demand for those fresh product, and hopefully it doesn't become a food desert. But yeah, definitely a tough scenario. Yeah.
There
It
was
is at the legislation level that you have to address these food deserts, for sure, because then it's an issue of, like you were saying, it's not just financial. I don't think that eating McDonald's is necessarily cheaper than cooking your own food if you stick with like simple whole food ingredients, healthy grains, healthy vegetables. You don't have to go crazy or fancy on the vegetables to eat a balanced and nutritious diet. But like you said, like time is such a value in itself that people can't afford. A lot of times, your time you have to spend it working. And it becomes like a vicious circle that, like, if you're not really eating healthy, or if you're not healthy, then you spend a lot of bills with the doctors, unfortunately. So you get less money, and so on and so forth. And then you also you have less time and less energy to be working and making that money. So it's a never-ending problem that's systematic, basically, and needs to be fixed at the legislative level. Because, like you said, it's great to teach people how to reconnect with food and what good food is supposed to be. But how do you do that to people who don't have the money or don't have the time? I know a teacher personally who was involved in one of these CSAs, community supported agriculture. She tried to create a stop in one of these food deserts so people could come directly there, didn't have to drive or anything. In the food desert, she was offering these subscriptions that you can come and pick up a basket of local seasonal produce. And a lot of things that it didn't work. And the reason it didn't work is not because of money. People could afford it. It was not very expensive. It was time. It's exactly what you said. It comes down to like, yeah, but I have to cook it. I don't have to cook it, or I don't want to take the time because I have so many things on my plate, pun not intended, and when there's a McDonald's down the road. So we're trapping people in a systematic way like that. That needs to be addressed.
And it's definitely, I think it's a societal, we're in this paradigm of, we're trying to, we want it all, you know what I mean? We want to get, we're to say, what the shiniest car, and we just don't spend time to cook, and take time for ourselves. Because you're true, if you cook for yourself, you know what I mean, that it, not only is it going to taste better, but you're right. Like McDonald's, it's not a cheap. If I go to Chipotle, I'm spending $50. That's if my kids want like guacamole, the add-ins and stuff like that. But then if I go across the street and if I go to Heinen's or and spend $50 in groceries, I mean we could have a steak dinner. You know what I mean? So it's
leftovers.
You're right. I mean fast, but it's I think that issue is that time factor. Yes. I'm going to Chipotle because it's. I don't have to go shopping. I don't have to cook it, and I don't have to clean it. It's just a done deal. So
it's a habit. It's habit forming, and it is this ultra processed foods that is just replacing fresh produce.